Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be talking about some of the games that I enjoyed the most that were released in 2016. Disclaimer, this is my personal opinion, so if you don't agree with my opinion, that's okay. We all have different opinions, and these are mine, so keep that in mind. I'll be limiting myself to games that were released on PC. Superhot, which was a crowdfunded game. I wasn't expecting much from it. What I liked was the gameplay. It was very amazing and a great innovation, where time progresses only when you move. Each level gets more and more challenging with new weapons and character placements, and the game was very cheap. I think I got it under $20. What I didn't like about this game was the length. It was very short. It was like 3 to 5 hours long, depending on how skilled you are on this game. I finished it, and you don't have much replayability to do. You can repeat the levels if you want, and you unlock some challenges like the endless mode, which is a mode that enemies spawn endlessly until you die, but there's not much to do after you finish the campaign unless you really like the gameplay and keep playing. So far, for the time you spend with the game, you get a lot of fun. If you buy it on a sale, this game is fantastic, but again, in my opinion, the problem with this game is the length. So if you're okay with that game that is short and sweet, this is a game for you. Watch Dogs 2, yeah, very surprising. Watch Dogs is in the list. Let me explain. What I liked about this game was the options, the ways that you can finish the missions. You can just hack the cameras and do everything from there. Use your gadgets like a small two-wheeled vehicle or a quadcopter, a drone, to scout the area, then go in without killing anyone. You have a stun gun, or just go guns blazing. If you play on realistic, which is the highest difficulty setting, and try to do stealth, it feels a lot like a new Splinter Cell game, which is amazing. I'm a fan of Splinter Cell. And playing this game on the highest difficulty, non-lethally with stealth, is very rewarding, so I suggest you do that. If you like stealth games, this is a great option. You have many ways of completing the missions, so you have a lot of freedom. And I never seen such a level of interaction with the NPCs on the street, which I found very amazing. You can actually take selfies with people, some take the picture with you, some others will just insult you. It's kind of amazing, all the stuff that you can do within the game's world. It's not like everything depends on you. The world just keeps going, and it's an amazing representation of San Francisco. What I didn't like about this game, for the most part, was the story. It was kind of stupid, in my personal opinion, but I don't really pay attention to that. The multiplayer, in my opinion, wasn't that good either, so I turned it off completely. Well, some people had issues with the PC port. Personally, I found it pretty good, but to get 60 frames per second, you need a very beefy CPU, so keep that in mind. Even with an i7 4790, I had issues to maintain 60 frames per second, but if you can get over that and some bugs here and there, you'll be fine. This is what Watch Dogs 1 should have been. Battlefield 1. You'll say, why Battlefield 1 isn't number 1? Well, let me explain. I really like the multiplayer. The single player wasn't that good in my personal opinion. I'm more of a single player kind of guy, so I didn't enjoy the single player that much. But the game itself, I felt it was very amazing. The multiplayer, I had a lot of fun with it, but I don't really last very long on multiplayer games. I found it very repetitive, since I'm used to play Battlefield from Battlefield 2, so I found the multiplayer kinda familiar, so I got bored pretty quickly. Then the PC port was very amazing. I found that some people on a couple maps have problems with stutters. That's mostly due to CPU power. This game uses a lot of it, which was kind of insane. It was using like 80% of an i7 4790, but on most PCs it ran amazing, which I found surprising. It ran better than Battlefield 4 on most of my rigs, so that's a great thing DICE did this time with the PC port. And the graphics are much better than Battlefield 4 in my personal opinion, so I found it surprising. But again, the single player in my opinion was short and not that well made, but it's still better than Battlefield 4 in that aspect. And the multiplayer, I found it kind of familiar and repetitive, but still a great game if you like Battlefield and you don't mind playing that kind of multiplayer again. And the new mode that was introduced, called Operations, I found it to be the most enjoyable part of the multiplayer, in my opinion. Is that you play along multiple maps, and depending how the match was, it tells you how parts of World War I were fought. All those rotating maps that you have in Operations, I wasn't able to finish a match because it took a long time, at least for me, but I found it like a good addition to the Battlefield multiplayer. So yeah, good recommendation if you like multiplayer. Single player not that much, but still enjoyable. But for the full price, you in my opinion, you have to like the multiplayer, because this is what the game was designed for. Rise of the Tomb Raider. This one I wasn't expecting to enjoy it that much. I know this game was released last year on Xbox One, but the PC version was released this year, so I will take it as a 2016 game. So what I liked about this game was the campaign. It was packed with content, it was long enough, and it had many exciting moments. The map was kind of large, but it's not an open world game. It has many areas that are open for you to explore, with a lot of tombs hidden into the maps, which was a nice touch. You can avoid the tombs if you want, or you can just find them all. After you finish the game, you have all the map available for you to explore. The gameplay was much more polished than Tomb Raider 2013, which was the reboot. This one is more polished and has a lot of more options to attack, special ammunition, all that kind of stuff, much more customization. And it has some great DLC released a few months ago, which I recommend a lot. If you can get the game with the season pass, it's great value. But what I didn't like about this game in the campaign was the story. The story was good, but some of the parts of the story didn't make sense compared to the reboot. I mean, the personality of Lara has changed quite a lot. It's like in the first game she says one thing, and this game is the complete opposite. It was kind of weird. It didn't feel like the original character that we got in the reboot, which I found kind of disappointing, because some of the things that she did didn't make much sense. But so far, great sound, great graphics, and the PC port had a lot of options, but I didn't find it like a good performer. For the most part, it ran well on most hardware I tested, but it was kind of hard to run on the 750 Ti and 950. I know those cards are not the highest end, but it was kind of difficult considering what things I had to turn off. So it's one of the most demanding games, but I found it to be very fun and good value if you buy the game with the season pass at around $30. In my opinion, it's a perfect deal. You have a long campaign with a very bombastic feel. So yeah, my personal opinion, it's a fantastic game. Hitman, or Hitman 2016. So this is the reboot of Hitman. They released this as an episodic thing, which I didn't think it was going to work, but it did. And I found it quite surprising on how good this game is. They polished the game way more than the previous ones. So what you have here, I didn't like much Absolution, the previous one, because it didn't feel like Hitman. It was like a story-driven game with some corridors and small open areas, except on a couple levels, but I didn't find it much of a Hitman game. It was like a personal story, which isn't Hitman. So this one I found it like it has more polished gameplay from Absolution, which was very good in the gameplay department. But on how you approach your targets, what you can do in the world, it was very much like the previous ones that I really liked when I was younger, that I played a lot. So you have these episodes. The one I liked the most was episode 2 in Italy, Sapienza, which it had a lot of replayability. That's what this game has, replayability. There are tons of options on the maps. You can approach your target the way you want, but it doesn't feel like it the first time you approach a map. Then by exploring, you start to find some other ways of killing your target. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, and this episode I like the most. I've played 20 hours of just episode 2, just discovering stuff on how to kill the target, which was kind of amazing. I played just like 20 hours on a single episode. That's because I liked the previous games, and I finally got one that it was very similar to the previous ones that I played when I was younger. So it was amazing. The other episodes were fine too. As long as you keep playing them, you get the value out of the game. If you don't like replaying the same level and trying to plan your strategy, this is not your kind of game. But I found it to be a very good value for the price that it offers. And next year we'll have season 2, so we'll have more episodes. We'll have to pay separate for them. But the thing I didn't like about this game, it was online only, so you'll have to play always online, which is nonsense. Now they released an offline mode that I didn't test yet, but I will. And there are some targets that are like just temporal. If you don't kill them, they won't be showing up again. I mean, it's a good concept. I really like how it works, but if you buy the game, 2 years after release, you won't have those targets to kill. They're only temporal. That feels like a tacked on thing to make people buy the game right now, which is a good strategy, but I didn't like it so much from a consumer standpoint. I mean, if I want to buy the game 3 years later, I won't have those elusive targets, which is kind of disappointing because they are very fun to play. But yeah, if you can grab it, this is a fantastic game. It should be on sale right now on the Steam sale, so I suggest playing it. Number 4, we have Dark Souls 3. So Dark Souls 3 is, well, the third installment in the Dark Souls series. Very difficult game, as you may know, if you didn't finish the first one. I personally really liked Dark Souls 1. I played Dark Souls 2 till the end, but I didn't like it that much in comparison to the first one. It felt very different, but this felt like a good combination of the first game and the second one, which is a good thing, but it needs more stuff from the first game. It was much more fluid, like Bloodborne, the PS4 game, for what I could see in videos. The PC port wasn't that bad, but it wasn't amazing. I mean, the game performed well, but I was expecting more. But it's still Dark Souls with new graphics, more fluid movement. But what I didn't like about this game, if you play the previous ones, you'll know that on the second one you can teleport between bonfires all the time, because on the first one all the maps were just like very smartly connected, like a big map that you have to unlock part by part. This one isn't like that. You have big maps, but they are separated by teleportation. So you cannot, I don't know, run to the last boss. You have to teleport. So in my opinion, that kills most of what Dark Souls 1 is. That's one of the things I liked about Dark Souls 1. There were a lot of shortcuts very smartly placed around the map, which make you feel like you're in a big maze. But I see why they did this, to have more diverse levels, which I understand. But yeah, so far the game was fantastic by itself. It's totally Dark Souls, and I spent a ton of hours playing it. I finished it in 36 hours, and I played a lot of previous Dark Souls games, so I knew what I was doing. So if you didn't play the previous ones, this is a good start. You really won't miss much if you start playing this one before the others, but I suggest playing the previous ones if you can. Forza Horizon 3, so a racing game. I wasn't expecting to put a racing game into this list, which is kind of interesting. So when I was younger, I used to play Need for Speed. I played Most Wanted, Underground 2, Need for Speed Carbon, all those games that I enjoyed a ton. Then Need for Speed became something quite different that I didn't enjoy much on Need for Speed 2016. So I was very amazed on how good Forza Horizon 3 was. You have a ton of activities to do, and the Australia map is amazing. I mean, I wasn't expecting to have that much fun with a racing game. It has very varied options. You can tweak your car in many ways, on how it looks, on how it performs, on how you move the wheel. You can tweak it in whichever way you want. If you're a fan of racing games, this is a must-have. It has all the options you want to and more. But what I didn't like about this was that it was a Windows 2 game, so you can only play it on Windows 10, it's RTX 12, and a lot of people are having issues to get 60 frames per second. I found it very hard to get 60s, even in a GTX 1060 with an i7 4790. I mean, it was possible to get 60s, but I felt a lot of stuttering into that game. Luckily, we can play at 30 frames per second on lower end hardware, and the game feels very smooth because the frame pacing they did for 30 frames per second is perfect, like a console. It's 33.3 milliseconds, so it's very fluid at 30 frames per second, which I found very surprising on this PC port. But if you want 60s, it's kinda difficult to get to, and you need a very beefy CPU in order to get those frames. I didn't have that much fun with a racing game in a really long time. If you're interested in trying this game out, there's a free demo on the Windows Store, linked in the description, but I wish this was on Steam. Titanfall 2, it was a great surprise. If you told me that Titanfall 2 was going to be one of my favorite games of this year, I would laugh at you. This is an improvement on all aspects over the first one. I liked the first one, but it lacked a campaign. So this one, the campaign is amazing. This campaign, in my opinion, was way better than the Call of Duty campaign of this year and the previous one, but that in some way was to be expected, since this is the people that made Modern Warfare 1, Modern Warfare 2, some of the people that worked in those games were working here, which is a good thing. I was missing campaigns like that. It's a very fast-paced game. It's centered in you moving very quickly as much as you can, which you are used from Call of Duty, but it has some amazing levels. Some of the ones that you can travel between timelines in a fraction of a second, which is amazing. And it's way more polished than the first one. The wall running is much more satisfying. There is a lot of parts that you play without a Titan. I was expecting to be kind of disappointed, but not really. It was very solid. And when you play with the Titan, now you have like classes that have way more varied weapons for the Titans, but at the same time it doesn't feel unbalanced. It feels like when you get killed or kill someone with a Titan, it feels like your fault if you died or you didn't do well enough. And then the multiplayer is amazing too. It's still very fast paced like the previous one, but I felt it more complete with more stuff to do. In my opinion, it needs a better progression system, which the previous one lacked. This one does too, but it's much better than the first one. What I didn't like about this game was the player base. The player base is kind of small. We need way more players for this game, but it was to be expected since this was released close to the Battlefield 1's release date and Call of Duty. So in that aspect, it was a bad decision from Electronic Arts to release this game very close to those big blockbuster games. I mean, I will buy this over Call of Duty any day. I mean, a modern Call of Duty. And the other thing I didn't like was that the campaign was very short. It was like 4 to 5 hours, but the campaign, again, it's amazing. You feel like the game lasts way longer, but it doesn't actually. I mean, I was having so much fun that the campaign felt much longer. I hope for the next one, I don't know, if they release a Titanfall 3, that the campaign is at least 8 to 10 hours. That would be awesome. But yeah, this one is very satisfying and fun to play. And finally, number 1, my game of the year is Doom 2016. So this is a single player game. It has multiplayer, but I'm going to explain myself on why I liked it so much. Well, first of all, this game feels like a Doom game, which Doom 3 in my opinion didn't feel like. It's all about killing demons, about killing them in the most brutal way possible. There's no reloading, you move very fast. The glory kills were some of special moves that you have when an enemy has low health. I thought I was going to feel disappointed about those since they will slow down the gameplay, but they are so quick and smooth that you don't really feel that they stop you in any way. I mean, killing demons, but with a realistic kinetic feel. It doesn't take its campaign seriously at all. You get the classic characters that talk to you, but Doom guy doesn't really care. He just wants to smash things and kill demons, which is what I wanted to do when I got into the game too. And the levels are large. It has many secrets into it, so you can just then go back to the level and find the secrets that you missed, which some are really well hidden. I finished the game at almost 100%, but I had a lot of fun with the single player. In my opinion, Doom and Titanfall 2 had the best campaigns of 2016 and in a long time. But then what I didn't like much about this game was the snap map, which is a map editor so that you can make your own multiplayer modes and all that kind of stuff. Very basic. You don't have much options there. You cannot make a level with a million demons into it like you can do with mods on Fallout 4. So I would have liked more options on that. And this game also lifted the Nubo, so the DRM was removed, so now it doesn't have the Nubo anymore. And it also has multiplayer, but I didn't find it very special. It feels like an arena shooter mixed with a little Halo. It was very weird. I mean, I played it for 3 to 4 hours, but I didn't want to get into it anymore. It feels kind of unbalanced with some weapons. Everyone uses the same weapons, so if you want to play this game, the single player is the way to go, in my personal opinion. So yeah guys, that's pretty much it. Do you agree with my list, or I don't know, have an opinion about those games that I listed? And I wish a happy new year to all of you. Thank you for all the support.